Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Braver New Worlds, the podcast about the stories we need to tell for the future we want to see. My name is Nathan Young, and I am your host. And today we come back for one more solo episode. I think this will probably be the last one. It was never my intention to do this many solo episodes, but it just sort of worked out this way. And I'm kind of glad because it's given me an opportunity to really lay down a little bit of my philosophy around storytelling and like the value of storytelling and how leaders can be telling their own story. And these are all stories towards creating a better world for all of us. And so actually, it's working out that I get to share some of this information with all of y'all here. And hopefully it's helpful and you're finding ways to implement it. And so for the first solo episode 2 weeks ago, we talked about like the new story we need to tell. And the idea I laid out was about why storytelling has such a primacy in the human mind and how if we want to create some social change, we have to like be telling a story of what that change looks like. And for the second episode, I really laid out my philosophy on like the real value of leaders telling stories from a perspective of trust and persuasion. Like if you want to get people to pay attention to your message, you do have to communicate that message in the context of a story, or else it's going to get lost. It's not really going to get picked up on. It's just going to sound like words and kind of blend into the background. But if you tell it in the context of a story, it helps your audience understand who you are and why they should listen to you and why they should believe you. And so for this third episode here, I want to talk about how to tell your story. So how you personally, as a leader or an aspiring leader, is able to tell your own story, both through the work that you do and about the work that you do, about your life that brought you to this position that you're in right now. And I'll start by answering two questions. The first question is like, why do I need to tell my story? Like not just a story, but my story. And the second one is like, what do I actually mean by story too? Like, is this gonna be like a very like succinct anecdotal story, or are we talking about something else? And I'll start by answering the first question first, of like why you as a leader, an aspiring leader, need to tell your story. What's the value of that? And the answer is very simple. It creates trust. It helps your audience understand who you are, what you believe in, where you're going, and what you're trying to create. And by sharing your story, you're giving a little window into your world, into your life, into the experiences that you've had that have brought you to the place that you're at, that has you taking the actions that you're taking. It helps your audience relate to you and your motivations. It helps your audience believe in you and understand that like you actually are a person that means it and cares about the things you say you care about. It helps your audience see their interests in your story and your motivations and your plans that you're putting together. And ultimately, it really gives that insight into what it is you're trying to create in a way that can get people excited and motivated and like want to support you in what you're doing. And when I say create, I mean create on like a larger meta social level. What is the change you're trying to create in the world through the work that you do? What will be the lived experience of the people around you as a result of this change? So it's not just that you're like pursuing a career in family services to help people in need. It's that you're trying to create a more compassionate world. It's not just that you're trying to invent some new product, some new service, some new invention for the sake of inventing something. Maybe you are, but like if you're really going to be working from a position of leadership, you've got to have a bigger vision behind that motivation for invention. Maybe it's that you see the value in being in a more innovative world where we're working to deal with the problems and challenges we're experiencing in newer and more innovative ways. And this sort of bigger conceptual vision of what you're doing with your life and the work you're doing, it's often sometimes called your why, like your reason for being, your purpose. It's a larger change you're trying to create in the world. We're going to come back to that in a little bit, but I'll just put a pin in that for now. And maybe you're thinking to yourself like, no, I just want to invent the thing for the sake of inventing the thing. You don't actually care about like the bigger vision behind it. And that's fine. You could do that. And there's a story to be told about that too. I was specifically talking about storytelling as a leader. So like if you're trying to create something new in the world as a leader, that's going to affect a lot of people. And my hope would be that you're conscientious of how this thing you're trying to create would affect not only the people you interact with, but the people that would interact with whatever it is that you do create. And my hope is that if you're listening to this podcast, you're the type of person that wants to create this thing because you want to make the world better, not because you just simply want to enrich yourself or whatever the goal is. And this thing that you're trying to create, you can't do it on your own. You need help. You need supporters. You need people that believe in you, people that are willing to fund you, support you, encourage you, spread the word, whatever it might be. And so that's why it's important to tell your story. It's a story about what experiences you've had in your life that have brought you to this place where you're doing the work that you're doing now. And you have this certain set of goals and worldviews that you have in your life now. And what's motivating you to do the work that you're doing. And what this does is it just creates a feeling with your audience that you're on the same page, you're working towards common goals, and you have a common worldview. Even if you're not completely aligned on every single step of the thing, it helps the people that might be supporters, allies, co-conspirators really understand like where you're coming from. And there's one really valuable audience for this story, one audience that's most valuable for the story above all other audiences. I'm going to tell you who that audience is right now. That audience is you. You are the most valuable audience for your own story. Why is that, you think? Why would that be the case? It's because you need to be able to believe in yourself, and you need to be able to understand what it is that you're trying to do in your work and in your world and in the goals you have, so you can have that trust and faith and belief in what you're doing simply for yourself. Because if you're out there fighting the good fight, you know it's not easy. There's plenty of days where you probably wake up and you're like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? This is way too much work. There's a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainty. You're not really sure how things are going to work out. There's a lot of setbacks. And you need to assure yourself and affirm in yourself that like what you're doing is the right thing. As valuable as it could be for you to be telling this story and speaking the story out loud over and over and over again to different audiences so they can hear it, this is also less of a story that you're going to be sharing and more of a story that you are living and you are understanding and you are internalizing into why you are doing and what you're doing. And if you're doing it and you're being genuine and you're really going for it, people will see, people will notice, and it will help give them a more cohesive vision of what it is that you're doing. But you want to do this for yourself too. You want to really validate for yourself why it is you're doing what you're doing and make sure that you're doing it. Like if equality is important to you, if creating beauty is important to you, if being creative is important to you, how are you putting that into effect in your life? And in essence, that is your story. Now I want to back up a little bit, talk about the sort of format of a story, really the nuts and bolts of telling a good story. And there's a trope in Hollywood screenwriting, and it's called the Hollywood treatment. And I've never actually done this myself, but I've heard from a number of different screenwriters I've worked with over the years that if you ever want to submit a Hollywood screenplay and hope that it becomes a movie, you have to turn in, with that screenplay, you have to turn in what is called a treatment. And a treatment is just 4 questions that are written on the first page of this screenplay. And a potential producer for the screenplay looks at these 4 questions, and based on those questions, they decide if they want to go even a single page further in your script. And the questions are this is important. Questions are, who is the main character? What do they want? What's stopping them from getting it? And what's at stake if they don't succeed? So I'll give you a second to take that in. Who is the main character? What do they want? What's stopping them from getting it? And what's at stake if they don't succeed? Now, for your story, like, the main character is you. There's ways you could be telling your story where the main character is like the person you're trying to communicate to. But for today, we'll talk about the main character is you. And then you have to think about, okay, what is it that you want? What do you want? What is it you're trying to create? This is what we were just talking about a minute ago. What is it that you want? And what's that you're trying to create? And this is such an interesting question for us here. It's like such a simple question, but such an interesting question for us to answer, because I think a lot of times this could be a very challenging question for us to answer. Like, what do we want? And in my own storytelling here, like the way I've phrased it for myself here in the beginning, like I want to create a better world. And that's very vague. Better can mean lots of different things. But even then, it's hard. I think a lot of times we sort of struggle just to even admit that we want the things that we want and that we want to create the kind of world that we want to create. We have a lot of humility pushed into us to the point of it becoming shame. We don't necessarily feel that we're allowed to have a big desire like this, or it seems hubristic or entitled, or we might worry that if somebody hears it, they might laugh at it. They might think it's silly. We might not see ourselves as the kind of person that can follow through on that commitment towards that desire. Somebody important in your life might not have the same want as you, the same goals, the same vision, the same desire as you, and you might lose that person because of that. It can be a very vulnerable thing to just share what you want. But if you're going to tell a story and you're going to be a leader, that's one of the things you have to do is figure out, like, what is that thing that you want and be willing to share it and state it openly and publicly. And if you watch like movies or TV shows, one of the things that's so interesting about the way they tell stories is they really telegraph what the want is for the main character, especially common in movies. It's something like within the first 17 minutes, they need to share what it is that the main character wants. And then we got to think about like what's stopping us from getting it. And when we think about like what is stopping us, there's lots of different factors there. And there could be like all these external, systematic or logistical factors that's stopping us from getting the things that we want. And those are all very, very real. But but when it comes to your story, another big part of it too is like your own internal factors. Where do you struggle to believe in yourself? Where do you struggle to build the coalition you need to bring your ideas forward? What are the tools you need to find to put into place to make your vision come together? These are all the things that are stopping you. And part of your journey as a leader is to figure out how you get past these obstacles. It actually makes for a good story to tell. And before I get to the last one, I'm going to back up too. Like, who's the main character? A lot of times you need to get to know yourself as a sort of main character in your own story. Get to know yourself as this external character from you that people might see that is very different from how you see yourself. That's a strange part of our world that we live in right now. We don't always see ourselves the same way other people see us. And we need to develop that sort of self-awareness to see ourselves from outside of our own point of view and perspective of ourselves. Because part of what's important about this too is like, who is your biggest critic of you and the things you're trying to do? It's probably you. It's probably you. You're probably way harder on yourself than anybody else is on you, even privately. Nobody's saying the kind of things about you in their own head that you're saying about yourself to yourself all the time. So part of it is like really, learning to understand yourself, develop some self-awareness to see yourself outside of your own concerns and insecurities about yourself. Now we get on to the fourth one. It's what's at stake if they don't succeed. What's at stake for you as the hero of your story if you don't succeed? What do you stand to gain or lose by the completion of your mission, of your journey, of getting that thing that you want? And by extension, what do the people that are going to be on the receiving end of what you create, what do they stand to gain or lose by not having access to it? If you want to create a better world in your own place, what are the people around you going to gain from that better world? What are people around you going to lose from not having that better world? Also, when we think about storytelling too, there's sort of three levels of it. And I talked about this a little bit earlier of those challenges. Because part of it is that physical challenge, the logistical challenges. Part of it is the emotional challenges, the internal mental challenges that we have. But the third challenge also is that philosophical societal layer of the challenge. And this is for us as the audience. This is like this gets that bigger idea of like what it is that you're trying to create. Like you want to create a better world. What is it that exists in our world? What are the mindsets? What are the narratives? What are the structures in our world that exist now that are keeping us from getting the better world that you imagine? These are your dragons that you are out to slay. And that is a story that you want to tell too. Like, how are you, the knight in shining armor, out slaying those dragons of an old world order that you don't see as relevant anymore, or that you want us to get past, or that you want us to create something new around? What are you doing on a day-to-day basis? What have you done in the last week? What have you done in the last month? What do you hope to do in the future? And what do you hope it'll look like once you've defeated that dragon? And these are the stories you want to tell. And again, there's lots of venues in which to tell this story, whether you're sharing it on social media, whether you're giving it a public talk, whether it's in an interview for a position or a large role, or looking for investors, whatever it is, this is a story that you want to be telling. But this story is also for you. It's for your own confidence, and it's also for you to help you focus your actions and really know what the story is that you're living in. Maybe the next question you have is, well, how do I do that? Do I just decide? Do I just look at everything I got down? Do I do a little brainstorm and say like, this is my story? Or how do I decide what my story is that I really want to focus my attention on? What if I change my mind next week or next month? How do I really affirm for myself that this is a story and I'm sticking to it? And I'll tell you how. The trick is you need to define your purpose. And I know this sounds like a bigger, kind of leadership trope here as well, but it really is important to define your purpose for yourself. And this is going to be what defines your story. And I have a way that I prescribe to my clients for how to define their purpose. And I go back to a pretty simple and elegant format that I've found. I didn't come up with this myself. I've found it. And I think the person who I'm about to give it credit for, I think he probably found it somewhere else too. If you're familiar with the thinker Simon Sinek, I go back to his formula of find your why. And if you don't know who Simon Sinek is, I actually don't know that much about the guy either. I think his background is he's like a marketing consultant. Then he had a TED Talk that got famous, and the idea of the TED Talk was the power of why. He built a lot of clout around that TED Talk. I think it's like the second most watched TED Talk behind the Brene Brown TED Talk. That's like the first most watched TED Talk. But his find your why concept is very simple. And it's just about like, how do you define your why for yourself? And he actually lays out a very simple and elegant way to do it. And I love it too, because it's, very actionable. It's attainable. It's like not like you're going to be sitting on a park bench and looking out over the sunset and just sort of waiting for your why to come down upon you from on high. You're actually, there's a methodological way of defining it for yourself. And I know for myself, and doing this work for myself and in doing it with clients, that it actually works out really well. So I want to give you a little paraphrase of what it is now. You can go pick up his book, Find Your Why, if you want to get the deeper story behind it. But it's actually pretty simple concept. And the methodology that he prescribes is this. It's to just think about your life and think about the most important stories in your life. And these stories are going to be based on like personal experiences, like experiences you had in your life that represent the important moments, the important stories in your life. And some of these, like maybe you want them to be very like succinct moments in your life. Maybe it could be a phase of your life. Maybe it could be some kind of ongoing piece of your life that you need to share as part of like your story. And so to give us some examples, like, maybe the birth of your child, that really changed your mindset, changed the way you looked at the world. And that's an important story you want to share. Maybe it was, finding your current partner. Maybe the story might have a little longer time frame, though. Maybe the story might be about, the relationship you had with your partner leading up to, getting married. Maybe it's a story about, raising your child the first handful of years of their life. Or maybe it's a longer story, like raising your child from like day 1 to 18 years old out of the house. Maybe it's still going from there. Maybe it's a story about something that happened to you when you were 5 years old. Maybe it's a story about, what life was like for you when you were younger. I usually encourage people I work with to think about this on a couple different levels, to think of like, what are the sort of like longer ongoing stories in your life? What are some like the more medium term stories where maybe you're just talking about like a phase in your life? And what are the more succinct stories where you're talking about a very specific moment, a period of like an hour or two, where some things really came together in your life or some big profound shift happened in your life? And so try to have a mix of those sort of like lengths of stories and perhaps have a shift of like periods of your life from which you're pulling these stories. But again, the 10 most impactful stories of your life. Think about what those stories are and start by just writing them down. Just, a quick line or two about what that story might be. And then once you've done that, go back and look at your list and think for yourself about, if you had to narrow that list down to 5, what would be the 5 stories that are the most impactful and important in your life from that list? Could be 6, could be 7, it could be 4. I'd recommend at least 5. And take those 5 stories and go a step further, right? Write a paragraph, write a page, maybe even 2 pages for each story. Like really lay out what happened in that story and take some time to sit with it. Try to remember the feelings that you had, the emotions you had, the things that changed for you because of that story, the struggles that were a part of that story, the stakes that are a part of that story, who the important people in your life were, what your motivations were, what you believed prior to that story, what you believed after that story. Really take some time to sit with each one of those stories. And so now you've got your list of 10 stories, you've got your 5 stories that you've gone deeper into, and you've got these write-ups that you've done about these 5 stories. And ideally for this next step, you're working with a partner. You're working with somebody, a partner, a coach, even a friend who can review it with you. And share these stories with them. Either, read them out loud or let them read what you wrote down. And as you're going through these stories, and like, if there really is nobody around, you can do this by yourself too. There'll probably be some things that you'll miss, but you can do it by yourself. And if you feel comfortable, you can ask an AI to help you out with this too. Just copy paste your story into the AI. Go through the story and make a list of all the themes that emerge in each of those stories. And by themes, I mean just ideas, concepts, feelings. Themes might be healing, family, strength, resilience, creativity, innovation, overcoming challenges, believing in yourself, creating community, anything like that. I encourage you to write down I would say at least 10 to 15 themes for each story if you can, but there's no harm in going deeper than that. If you want to get to 30 or 40 themes for each story, you can do that as well, but at least 10 to 15. And do that for each of the 5 stories that you went a little bit deeper with. And now you're going to have this list of themes. And here's where it gets really interesting, because you're going to take this list of themes and you're going to put them all together. You're going to make one big list. As you're doing this, look for what themes show up the most often in your lists. Is there a certain theme that exists in all 5 stories? Another thing would be to look for a theme that shows up most powerfully in this list. And so maybe this theme only shows up in 3 of your stories, but it's like the theme in those stories. And perhaps it even shows up in at a smaller degree in the other ones. You essentially want to give these themes a very rough ranking based on the value they had in your stories, like whether it was a really impactful and primary theme in the stories and how frequently they show up in your stories. Basically find a balance in listing the themes along those 2 parameters. And it doesn't need to be perfect. You just kind of create a rough list. And ideally what's going to happen is once you get this list, and this list might be 40, 50, 60 themes long, but you'll notice there's going to be about 10 themes that really percolate up towards the top. And of those 10, there'll even be 2 or 3 themes that stand out more than that. And these 3 themes are going to be sitting right at the top of that list, and they're just going to be shining like a beacon there for you. They're going to be hard to avoid. And this combination of those top 2 to 3 themes and that larger list of 10 themes, this is how you're going to define your why. And so once you've got this list, you've got those 2 or 3 themes that's standing up at the top there, and you've got that larger list of about 10 themes. Here's what you're going to do with that. From those first 2 to 3 themes, you're going to define your why statement. And Simon Sinek, in his Find Your Why formula, he offers a pretty straightforward formula for this. I'll share it right here. And the formula is 2 blank so that blank. So first blank is your contribution. The second blank is the impact you hope that contribution makes. So it's 2, do something that's going to contribute to the world so that it can create this impact. You're going to fill in that contribution and impact with the words that are at the top of the top of that list of themes you have. And so I encourage you to mix and match. Try a couple different versions of what this formula could look like for the words that you have. And I'll share mine with you here. So mine is to inspire people to create the kind of life they want for themselves and open the doors to create a world that's more equitable, fulfilling, and sustainable for all. This is a why statement I developed. I did this in 2021, so it's a little bit old. Maybe it's due for an update, but I still feel like this is relevant. And I remember the themes that came up for me was around not really finding that I fit in with the kind of conventional path that most of us take in our lives. And I had to figure out a new path for myself. And I was really inspired by stories and people in my life that I felt like I saw them taking a new path. And that was part of the theme that showed up at the top of the list for me. And the other themes that showed up were towards the top of my list were about like equity and living a fulfilling life and being able to thrive in this world that we have more of nature and good air and beautiful things in this world longer than if we're just pillaging the world of all its resources. And so that's how I came up with my why, to inspire people to create the kind of life they want for themselves and open the doors to create a world that's more equitable, fulfilling, and sustainable for all. Yours doesn't need to be as long as mine. Yours can be like 10 words long. But again, just play with the words in that formula. And the other thing I'll note right now too is a lot of times it can sound generic. You're going to look at yours and be like, it just sounds so cheesy, it sounds so corny, it sounds so generic. That's okay. It does kind of do that sometimes. But we're going to get to the next step here that's going to help it come to life a little bit more. And this is going to involve those other values you have. So it's not those 2 or 3 themes that go towards your why or your purpose statement. It's those other 7 or 8 themes you have. And those 7 or 8 themes are going to go towards your how statement. And your how is how you work towards achieving your why. It's the actions you take when you're at your best that's bringing your why to life. And this is actually like on some level more important than the why because this is going to guide your day-to-day actions. And so I'll give you my how statements I came up with. It was be true to yourself, explore life, share stories, bring people together, and present a new narrative. Those are my hows. So I'll start from the top of all of it. So my why is to inspire people to create the kind of life they want for themselves and open the door to a world that's more equitable, fulfilling, and sustainable for all. And how I'm going to achieve this, I'm going to be true to myself. I'm going to explore life. I'm going to share stories. I'm going to bring people together. I'm going to present a new narrative. If you want more examples, you can Google this online. Simon Sinek has his own zone. There's lots of other people too. And if you're struggling with this, I get it. Like this isn't the easiest thing to do, but I'm just going to give you this like very broad outline of how this goes, just to kind of give you some context, something you can work on. I mean, this is like a podcast. This isn't like a workshop per se, but maybe this does spark some ideas for you. You can start to work on this on your own too. And what these hows represent, like if your why represents your purpose, these hows essentially represent your values. This is what you believe is important in the world. And this is how you are choosing to live. And so that why statement paired with the how statements is really where all of this comes to life. Because now you're talking about the goal you're working towards, what you're trying to create, and you've outlined 5 ways that guide how you are going to create this. And for a lot of times when people do this, like maybe at first, as soon as you're looking at it, you're like, okay, I've definitely had some people I've done this with where they like just like, whoa, yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, that just rings true right off the bat. Some people, they kind of played around with it a little bit. It wasn't quite sitting with them. They worked on it a little bit more over the next couple of days, came back to it. And then one day, maybe a week or 2 later, they pulled it out of the drawer, out of their folder, opened up the file again, and they looked at it and they're like, actually, I like that. I do like that. And if you do it right, on some level, like this will be you. I just said that this one I wrote here, I wrote it in 2021. So it's a little bit old. This could, to a certain degree, this could have been true at any point in my life, and it can still be true today. And maybe it gets updated by certain degrees, but for the most part, like these whys and hows, they kind of stay the same through your whole life. And you might even see that like you actually kind of always were, that was an underlying thing you're trying to do the whole time. And just maybe you weren't successful with it. Maybe you didn't believe in yourself. Maybe you didn't have the tools to actuate it, but it was there. And going forward, this is going to be like how you're going to be operating in the world too. The other really great and clarifying thing about this is once you do define this for yourself, it becomes very easy to decide what is a yes and no in your world now. Because if it doesn't align with your why and your how, like if it doesn't take you closer to your why, or if it doesn't let you operate in integrity with your hows, then maybe it's not for you to do. Maybe you just don't do it. Maybe you can skip it, back out, whatever it is. And I'm telling you, like that right there can just free up a lot of bandwidth in your head. But when I brought up these 2 things earlier, one of them was about how you need to be able to tell your story to yourself so you know and understand your own story, so you're just living it. And the other thing I brought up was that Hollywood treatment of like, who's the main character? What do they want? What's stopping them from getting it? And what's at stake if they don't succeed? What I like about defining your story for yourself this way is you've essentially answered those two questions for yourself. Like, this is your story, your why and your hows. This is your story. This is what you're trying to do. You are the main character. What do you want? That why. The why is what you want. What's stopping you from getting it is you need to be living up to your hows. So whatever challenges you have and living up to your hows, that's going to be a lot of what's stopping you from getting to your why. There's other things too. There'll be like bigger external factors. There'll be the bigger societal systems that we're working through. But on a personal level, like, it's your own ability to live up to your hows. This could be a big part of what's going to be holding you back from your why. And this is part of your personal challenge and your struggle, because your hows are supposed to not represent you every day, represent you at your best, represent you on your best days. And what's at stake is what you're outlining in your why too. Like, what's at stake with mine? What I want is I want to inspire people to create the kind of life they want for themselves and open the door for a world that's more equitable, fulfilling, and sustainable for all. What's at stake? People not creating the life they want for themselves, and we never get that world that's more equitable, fulfilling, and sustainable for all. What are my challenges? My challenges are being true to myself. My challenges are staying on track with this why. My challenges are exploring life. I don't explore life as much as I would like. I'm not like some super free-spirited guy, despite having that in my how. When I'm at my best, I am exploring life a lot more than I am, when I'm not at my best, which is 90% of the time. But when I'm really doing, when I'm really kicking it, I'm exploring life. Sharing stories, to me, that means being open and vulnerable and sharing my own life experiences. I think that's important for me to do as, within my role, to share how I see the world and help people understand who I am and what I believe and what I'm sharing. And hopefully that helps them feel more comfortable doing the same for themselves too. Bringing people together, building community. That's I feel like that's when I'm at my best also. And presenting a new narrative. I mean, this is kind of the crux of my work. This is what the whole Braver New Worlds is all about, is offering the world a different way that we could be living in our world, offering a perspective outside the one that we've all sort of adopted and inherited, a new perspective on what our world could be like. And this is what I want to be doing all the time. I do it most of the time. I'm doing at least one of those things most of the time, not doing all of those things all the time ever. But the more I'm doing each one of those things, the better I'm doing, and the more I'm getting towards that why. And so I'm going to wrap this up right there. Hopefully that was helpful for you and gave you a little bit of perspective into how you can think about telling your own story. And again, it just kind of ran over this real quick in the course of a, 30-minute podcast, give or take. This is usually a little bit deeper work than that you're going to be getting into, but I'm going to plant these seeds right now. You can think about it. And if you want to go through this together, if you want to work on this together, is part of the services I offer as well. So we can do this together. And hopefully in the near term here, I can start creating a little bit more group workshops around doing this work too, because I do think it's important. I do think there's a lot of value from it. And when I'm able to offer this to people, I see how it impacts their life in very positive ways and helps them get very clear on their own goals, their own trajectory, their own meaning, and their own wants and desires, and their own way that they can contribute to the world, often in ways that we might not have fully understood, or we might not have completely believed in ourselves. But by doing this work this way, hopefully you come to see yourself as a stronger, more capable leader. You start to see how you are actually putting your goals, your values, your beliefs out into the world and putting them into motion. And you start to see how the path unfolds in front of you for the place that you want to go, and how you can share this with other people too. Make it clear that this is what you're doing, this is why you're doing it, and this is where you hope this will all go in time. Even if it doesn't look like it right now, even if you're struggling with it right now you know where you're going, and you can help other people see that too. Whether they want to see your path, they want to see their own path, both those things can work here. So with that, I'll cut it off. This has been another episode of Braver New Worlds. I'll put maybe some stuff that'll help with this in the show notes. And again, if you're listening to this on one of the podcast channels, if you want to go over to YouTube, probably be a little bit easier to start and stop it there. It'll just be living there on YouTube, and maybe I'll try and add some slides or some things to the show notes that make it a little bit easier to follow too. But anyways, that's it for now. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful, and I hope I have an interview for you next week. But I can just go another step deeper in all this too if it comes down to it. So with that, we will wrap it up. Thank you so much, and have a good day. Bye.